All right, coming to you from my living room. A couple of things. As you can see, I'm going very casual today, so saving water, right? Saving shampoo. But also, my cat is super active right now because I think she knows that I need to record. So this is like my third try, but she will be noisy. She will jump around, etc. So just enjoy. So Chapter 2, Environmental Ethics, Economics, and Policy. I just have the pictures from the PowerPoint, not the whole PowerPoint. You can do that on your own. Just going to give you an overview. Pull out some of the key things that I think you really should know. Super important chapter. Starts out with talking about dams. So it's not just this Hetch Hetchy reservoir in San Francisco that's been politically argued over the years. There's so many waterways that are dammed up, from large waterways to small waterways, and a lot of people think that those dams should be removed. Now, dams have been around for a long time as far as providing energy or providing that motion you need to like grind corn for cornmeal. Dams have given us energy for a long, long time. It's people who go out into nature and say, how can we harness energy? And moving water is a huge way to harness energy. But when you dam something up, you completely change the ecosystem. Rather than running water, you have still water. It changes the flora and fauna, so the plant and animal of the area. So some people say, well, maybe we should return things to the way they were. And some people say, well, it's been so long. Why do we do that? So they really argue back and forth in trying to figure out what's the best way to handle a dam or to dam up something in the first place. So this chapter here, there's that valley, that Hetch Hetchy Reservoir Valley. It says this is the valley before the dam was there, right? And then this is back in the 1800s. So right here, this picture is 1903, but this is President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, one of my favorites, because he really was one of those people who set aside land to keep it for future generations. We wouldn't have a lot of the things we have as far as our parks and our beautiful places to go if it wasn't for Teddy Roosevelt. And as well, for this guy here, John Muir, Scottish dude who came over, and he was very into nature, and he buddied around with presidents and really put a bug in their ear about these things are important to preserve, right? So he's a preservationist. He wanted to keep things pristine. He wanted to actually keep things pristine and no people to use certain areas. Like humans should completely leave these things alone. They are important just all by themselves, not because humans need or don't need them. And he influenced, politics, but there were other people like Gifford Pinchot who they were considered conservationists, and they were like, that's true that this stuff is beautiful and it's important to keep around, but guess what? We're humans and we need to use things, so let's just come up with a plan to manage these areas and use them in a way that we can get from them some resources like wood or fish or what have you. We don't destroy it completely, but we get to use it. And so that's the idea that preservationists kind of clash with conservationists, which they both care about the environment. So it's just interesting to see that in politics. So that's how your chapter kind of enters up. And then this next section, there's a lot of important people in environmental science who are mentioned here besides these guys. But in that next section, it talks about through history, like the pre-industrial times and how people viewed nature. And there was such a connection with nature when you had hunter-gatherers, because if you gathered too much, right, if you hunted too much, you depleted your resources. So hunter-gatherers really knew how to move around and to let areas rest and regrow and repopulate. So there's that sense that they were like one with nature. Then the agricultural revolution happened and people stopped and stayed still, and they start planting things, right? Now you still have to have a sense of the land when you plant things. You have to know the soil and how things grow and what they grow best. And but there's so there started to be that disconnect with nature, though. At that point, it talks in here about. Let me go to this next one. I think this. Oh, there's the valley after the water is there. So yeah, it talks about, people kind of domesticating animals and domesticating the land basically for crops. And interestingly, a lot of religions came from this time, right? When Christianity, Islam, Judaism came from this time period. And it was that whole idea of Anthropocentric View. It says it was evidenced by man having created God's image, like God's image that's supposed to be like humans, right? So anthropocentric views are when you do things because it's for the best of human beings. It's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It can be. It's like it can be bad in the way that, well, we want all this water for our agriculture and drinking, and not thinking about people that come after you. But it can be a positive thing too. I could say, hey, I want clean water because I don't want to get cancer. So that might sound selfish. I want clean water for myself, right? For people, so we don't get cancer. But if it protects the water, that's one angle that you can get people to care about the earth, right? So then it kind of went into where you have this biocentric view. So you actually start to care about everything that's living. So the giraffe, the mosquito, fungus, human beings, bears, they're all equally important. They all play a role in the environment, and to really think about what damage we do or don't do to them. And then Hinduism and Buddhism came out of that view. They mention Aristotle in here, and I'll let you look into that a little bit more. But as far as ecocentric, that's really about protecting whole systems, right? So we don't just think of the living things, we think about the river and how it interacts with the living things, and the air. So it's like viewing the totality of everything and seeing how important that is. And you have people like John Leopold, who wrote The Land Ethic, really starting to look at how every piece plays a part in the environment. Some of that came out of when the Industrial Revolution started to really take hold. People, you have poets and writers looking at how dirty and far removed we were from nature, and being very disturbed by that, and saying, we have a disconnect here, and we're not seeing the spiritualness of nature anymore, so we're not respecting it. And so they started writing poems, and you have Hawthorne coming out of there, and Whitman, and Henry David Thoreau, Thoreau's Walden, and what is that show, The Waltons? I think is based on that book, Walden Pond. So you have those people coming out of there, and then you have Leopold looking at this and saying, there's the Walden book. Who is that guy? Is that E.O. Wilson? That might be E.O. Wilson, so I have to look at that, but this book is a little crazy. So to look at all these pieces, and Leopold kind of put it like this. If you have a web, like life is like a web, and if you touch one part of the web, the whole thing vibrates, right? So maybe if you've touched a spider web before and that whole thing kind of vibrates, that's what we really need to look at. Everything in the system. You tug at one part, it's going to affect everything. So it goes into the preservationists and conservationists a little bit more, and you'll read that if you do the PowerPoint or the text reading. Then it gets into ethics. Super important. I think really important for right now too. I guess that's where these pictures are coming from. So I know we've got a lot of protesting going on right now, and it's all about equity. And are we being equitable when we decide to put a landfill in certain neighborhoods, or an incinerator, which is going to spew out poison when it burns things, or we allow certain pollutants in the water, and who takes up that water? And a lot of people can't afford fancy water filters just to filter their water. Look at Flint, Michigan, if you don't remember that, the lead in their water. Who is usually impacted the most by these environmental issues, right? These the dangerous things that come out of what corporations and businesses, or just government entities, whatever it is, building, burning, burying, who suffers the most from these impacts? One movie, kind of older movie with Julia Roberts, I think it's in the 80s, is, oh no, I can't think of it because I thought of her name. Oh, Erin Brockovich, based on a true story. And Erin Brockovich, actually, you can find her website. She's still fighting the good fight for the people who don't have a big voice in this. I personally don't have lobbyists to put forward my views. So what is ethics? What's right and wrong? What's moral? Is it moral to, as a company, let's say who makes air fresheners, and that the formaldehyde you put in your air fresheners, formaldehyde is a carcinogen. So carcinogen means cancer causing. So is it ethical for you to put that in there? And if you're of the view of like, well, consumers can make up their own minds, and they'll vote with their dollars, and that's true. But how can you fairly vote with your dollars if you don't know the truth? So I posted a video talking about Adam Smith, and he's like the father of economics. And his idea was, let the market be a free market, and the people will vote for what they want. If it's a bad product, they won't buy it. If it's a good product, they'll buy it, and everything will work itself out like that. I think that can work if there's truth in it. So if you're going to go to McDonald's to get, a $1 burger, honestly, I don't know what they really are these days, but, and down the street there's Whole Foods who's selling burgers as well, and that one's like $5. You're going to be like, well, I'm going to go get this $1 burger. And that's going to put more money toward McDonald's, which puts more money toward factory farming, not the best worker environments, low pay, all of that, as far as like the slaughterhouses and the farming practices. But if you spend that money at Whole Foods, it's a little bit more of an honest, equal price, because they're not getting as many subsidies, as much free money from our taxes, right? Our taxes go to subsidies for these certain corporations and companies. Well, organics don't necessarily get that, or free-range farming, humane farming. So you're paying less over at McDonald's, but you're getting, what you don't know maybe is you're getting a cheaper product, fillers in there, the people who are, how they're treated as workers behind that whole scene. So if people were presented with the truths on both ends, maybe you'd pay a little bit more. Maybe you can't pay more, so you'd still end up buying the cheaper stuff. But at least maybe you would know that, if you did get a little bit more money sometime in your life, or just to voice that, to say, maybe I'm not going to buy this stuff, or not buy it all the time, or once in a while I'll buy organic to put my money toward that and to vote with my dollars. So if you don't know there's formaldehyde in your air fresheners because it doesn't say it on the label, how are you supposed to make a fair choice, right? So, but this actually goes into a couple of different things, and it has anthropocentric, biocentric, ecocentric mentioned in here as well. Let's see what else we have. Lion. Oh, that must be in the new book, because I'm looking at the second edition. I don't have a lion in here. So then we have ecofeminism. Let's go this way. Ecofeminism. And that really gets into the idea that oftentimes women are the ones who are impacted by environmental systems that aren't working correctly, right? So if they have to spend a lot of their day walking to get fresh water, then that consumes their day, that consumes their life with just trying to get resources for their family. So this woman here, I'm not sure if I ever learned really how to pronounce it very well, Wangari Maathai, and that you can find videos of her and they'll pronounce it correctly. But she started a movement in the 70s, I believe, where she had women planting trees. So now, after all these years, there's all these trees because these women did this. And so that helped with fighting off erosion, and so their water supply is a little cleaner. It's really a great story. So look into that if you'd like to. The remainder of your chapter covers a lot of terms, economic terms. I'm not going to go into each of them. I'm not going to get very detailed in the rest of this chapter. But it is important for us to know that from knowing what to value, the difference of opinions on what to value in the economy, do we put value on bees that pollinate or a tree that turns carbon dioxide into oxygen? What would be the value of that? Is something valuable only if people want it? So it gets into some of that, the ecological value of things. And then policy. Why do we need policy? There are a lot of people against government regulations, right? They think, well, let the market work out for itself. If you think the company's polluting, maybe you won't buy their product. But like I talked about, you might not know they're polluting. And maybe you want to put your money toward businesses that are trying to be more sustainable and protect us a little bit more. Will companies do that on their own accord, right? If you don't put a law in place that says you can't let that much mercury out from your smokestack, you need to scrub that, you need to filter that out because it's getting into the fish eventually that we're eating, or we're breathing it in and people are dying, people are getting cancer. Do we need laws and rules to regulate these businesses? What policies should be in place, and is there overreach, right? At what point does the economy outweigh the health of the people? Is there a way to balance that out? So look into that a little bit. There's often debate about that, and how can we get involved, right? Have you gotten involved? Have you ever signed a petition or voted, looked into what your politicians that you vote for or don't vote for, what they're putting their energies toward? We see that, and it often changes with administrations. Sometimes we have administrations that back up a lot of environmental protection, and then we have administrations who try to dismantle everything the administration before them did, and seemingly sometimes just for the sake of dismantling it, and other times they think it's not good for the economy if you have so many regulations put in place. So that's something to really weigh out. I'm a proponent of a good amount of regulations because I don't believe people are going to put people's health above the monetary income they'll get for putting out a bad product. They'd rather put out a bad product or not have to pay fines or not have to pay for scrubbing the pollutants out of their product or filtering their water before it goes into the waterway, because that costs them money and then they make less money. So yeah, there's a lot around that, and there's a lot that's kind of hidden from us in what's in our products. So one other thing I want to mention before I end this chapter is something called planned obsolescence and perceived obsolescence. Let me see here. I'm going to look real quick, see if I can do this quickly. It won't let me do it. Oh, here it is. Okay. So there's something called The Story of Stuff. It's this, it looks a little updated here. Nope, it's not this thing. Might be this one. I will attach this one. Let me see if it's the same one.
Little more.
Yeah. So this video I will put up on Blackboard for you. It's a good video. I mean, I know you're thinking 20 minutes, what the heck? I'm already listening to you for 20 minutes. But it really does go over a lot of that whole system of from cradle to grave, from the beginning of a product to its death, right? And that whole idea that we really should be thinking cradle to cradle. What can one product, what's its end life? Can it be something else after it's done, right? So look into that. Planned obsolescence is there are companies that they have engineers designing things so that it will break after a certain amount of years. So let's say you buy a toaster. They have engineers that design, let's try to make this last for 3 years. That way the consumer has faith in the product because they're like, you know, that was a good toaster. Lasted a whole 3 years. And they'll buy the brand again, but they purposely design it to break, so you have to buy it again. Okay? You'll hear older people like me talking about, oh, they don't make things like they used to. They don't. When I was a kid, you know, we got that Hungry Hungry Hippos game, and there were 6 of us kids, and we would jam on that thing and pound on it, and it wouldn't break. Let's see if I can find it. Hungry Hippos. This game here. So when we were kids, we would just pound away on it, never broke. And I bought one for my kids when they were little, and it broke super fast. It broke just after, you know, it barely worked. It didn't like move very well. A couple games like that. Even vacuum cleaners. When I was little, my mom had 2 vacuum cleaners, one upright Hoover and then one Electrolux canister. Those are the only 2 vacuums we had our whole lives. Since I've been an adult, I've been through, I can't tell you how many vacuum cleaners. They're just sincerely not made like they used to be made. A lot of plastic parts in things now, and things break. One tiny piece breaks, and it's like you have to get a whole new thing. So that's planned obsolescence. Perceived obsolescence is that whole idea of like markets telling you what is popular now, right? Who decides this? Right? The next iPhone comes out, so if you have a flip phone, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so out of style. That's perceived obsolescence. They want you to feel that you are out of style, you are not cool anymore, you are not in, and so you'll go out and buy the new thing. So whether it's like, oh, now tight jeans are in, now baggy jeans are in, it's all perceived obsolescence, and they know it, and they market that to us. So I'm guilty sometimes of that. Now, right now, I have a hand-me-down phone that's all cracked, and I have a friend who gave me a new one that he's not using anymore, so I still have to change that over, but I really don't want to buy a new one. I don't want to buy into this system, but it's tempting. So planned and perceived obsolescence. Okay, here's hoping that that video recorded, and yeah, I will see you in chapter 3.